Hi everyone, welcome to day 13 of the Frontend Bootcamp. I'm Gaurav and today we'll be learning how to build a weather app. So, how have you guys been doing? How did you find the last session, which was related to promises, async and await, and the fetch API? Because we'll be building based on whatever we learned in the previous sessions. So it's of utmost important whatever we have learned up till now, and we'll be applying most of the concepts that we have learned so far while building this app today. So you guys can let me know in the comments whether you are able to follow along. So yeah, a few of you are saying yeah, it's quite a lot to take on at the moment, but yeah, we are learning what's lots of new things, and I mean, as we progress, things are going to get more concept oriented. You will be using all of the concepts which you have learned so far, and new concepts will be introduced. That's how it goes. I mean, things get a bit complex, but that is why we are trying to build a solid foundation. So if you've not understood something, do not get disheartened. Keep at it. It takes a bit of time to get used to all of these things. There's so many new concepts that you guys are learning. You need to just keep on practicing and do not give up. Okay. In the beginning, nobody understands everything at once. It takes a bit of time, so do not be worried about that. Okay. Yeah, we're going at a certain pace right now because we want to cover maximum things, give you, maximum practical knowledge, and teach you how to build apps, and also cover all the concepts which are required for those things. So that is why we are going at a pace. But all the sessions are recorded. You can, review them. If you're stuck somewhere, you can come back and revisit that concept, try it on. That is why we are also having all of these hackathons, so that you guys are utilizing all the concepts that we have been learning so far. So it's to get you used to all of the things that we have been learning. Anyways, let's start with today's session. So we'll be building a weather app. um, I have identified a basic flow, So we will be having multiple sections. So in the first part, I mean, I have divided it into different sections. Let's just go over it. So in the first part, we'll be showing some information like the name of the city. We'll be showing the city's name and the temperature for that city, some description related to the weather, and then what's the high for today and the low for today. Then over here in the next step, we'll be showing the hourly forecast. Okay. This will have information such as the time for today. So let me just mention this over here. So we'll consider the time. Then the next thing that we will be showing in over here is the uh, so I have identified an API from which we will be getting all of this information. So the current time, then the weather, the temperature at that time, and also we'll be showing some sort of an image corresponding to the weather at that point of time. Okay, and over here we'll be showing this information as multiple cards sort of. So we will be having multiple elements over here. Then in the next part we will be showing the we'll be showing a 5-day forecast. All right. And so this section will be dedicated for that. So we will have multiple rows over here, each row for belonging to a particular day, right? And we'll be showing information such as, I mean, the similar kind of information that we're showing for current weather. So the the high, the high and the low, okay, for that day, and the name of the day. That is what we will be showing over here, and there will be multiple rows of that. And then the last two parts are related to uh, what does it feel like, okay, what does the temperature actually feel like, and the other part will be related to the humidity. So, I mean, it's kind of modeled on the weather app that we generally have in our mobile phones, right? So it's kind of modeled on that. So initially, we'll be building a mobile first. Uh, we'll be following a mobile first approach while designing the website, and then we will be writing media queries and target larger devices. So that is the idea. Now let's understand the API that we will be using to get all of this information. All right. So on a high level, this is the information that we will be showing inside our weather app. To begin with, we'll be considering a specific city. And then once we are done with the implementation for that particular city, we'll enhance it to include more cities and add more features to it. Okay. So let's look at the API that we will be using to build this app and get the information. So we have this API available with us known as Open Weather. All right. So if you go to their API page, we have this page available with us. So they, so I have already signed up to this website and I have taken up the free plan. So the APIs that we will be using are the current weather data to get the current weather's information, and the next one that we will be using to get the forecast is this API, 5-day 3-hour forecast. All right, so let's look at this API to begin with. Let's go to the documentation. Let me zoom this for you guys. Okay. Hang on a sec. Sorry about that. Yeah. So this is the URL that we will be using to fetch the information, which will be giving us the information about the current weather data. All right. By default, it accepts a latitude, longitude, and an app ID, which is the API key. So once you register, you need to you'll be getting an API key. So you go to your subscription, you go to my API keys, okay, and okay, so I have been logged out basically. um let's see. So I won't waste your time into this part right now. So once you log in, you will have the information about, you'll see your API key over there. That is something you need in order to, communicate with this service, so that, this service knows that you are authorized to, make this API call and get that information. So this is a mechanism which is provided by this site. So we just provide this API key to identify that we are authorized to make this API call. Uh, so these are some of the parameters that we can pass to this, service. So there is information about this. You can go through it, but very briefly, as I told you, latitude, longitude, API key, and this one is of importance to us. We'll be using the metric unit because in India we follow the centigrade. Uh, to get that particular unit, we need to make use of metric. When we use standard, we get the temperature in Fahrenheit. So based on where you are, you can pick your specific unit that you want to use. This is for getting the description in your language, right? So this is an example of an API call, and let's look at the different fields, the information that we get once we call this API. So so we're getting this coordinates, okay, weather. So weather has a description and an icon, and then we have this section for main which has the temperature, right? So this is showing in Kelvin, I believe. And then this is the temperature, the minimum and maximum for that day. And then there's some more information like what's the date and the time zone and the name of the place where this information is about, right? And the country. Some of these are some of the information that we're getting. Let me just copy this for you guys and inspect this in Json Hero. So Json Hero is a website using which you can go through the you can paste your JSON information over here, and it will show you all of that information in an organized manner, right? So the if we look at the the wireframe which we have, so we are interested in the city temperature description, high and the low for this part, right? So we're getting all of this information from this current weather data API. So let's identify the fields which give us this information, right? So if we look at main over here, right, it has these 8 fields. So temperature corresponds to the the current temperature. Then we can make use of temp min to show the the low for the day, and max to show the high for the day. Then we can make use of pressure and humidity and fields like for this part of the app, right? um, so the basic information is available under this main property which we are getting as part of the response, okay? And I'll just share this link with you guys in the chat. And don't worry, all of these links are available when you know, go through the resources on the website, Devsnest website, associated with today's session. You'll find all the links which we'll be going through today, okay, related to the API. And yeah, so these are the fields which will give us this information. Then we need description as well, right? So description is available under weather. Okay, so weather has 4 fields. It's an array. All right. So we are getting this description over here. There's moderate rain expected, and there's also an icon. We'll look at how to use icons a bit later on, right? Um, and then yeah, so this takes care of this part and these two sections. Then for the hourly forecast and the 5-day forecast, let's focus on that. But before that, I wanted to show you guys that there are a few other features associated with this endpoint. So we can also query based on a city name, right? So you can basically use this API, and instead of providing the latitude and longitude value, you can provide, you have to give the you have to structure the URL in such a way that you specify Q, and then Q is for query basically, and then you give the name of the city and the app ID, which is nothing but the API key. All right. So this way, you just specify the name of the city and you'll get the same response as we looked at over here, right? This one was based on latitude and longitude, but to begin with, we'll be doing a request using a specific city name. Okay. Then coming to the other API, right? Which is the API for the forecast. So here also it's kind of similar, only the URL is different. You specify a latitude and longitude and you specify the API key. And over here also there are some additional fields with regards to the units. And this basically tells us like how many, how much data that we'll be getting for the 5-day forecast. So let's take a look at the example, right? And if something is not clear to you, you can go below the response part, right? And it gives you a clear description of all the fields that we are getting and what do they mean, what information are they conveying. So all of this you can go through when you're going through the documentation, understand. I've already spent some time understanding these fields, right? So that's why I'm just able to quickly pick all the fields that we need. Let me just copy this response as well, and let's examine this in JSON Hero as well. So let me pass that information. Copy. Okay. Give me a sec. No JSON. What happened? All right. For some reason, it's not opening, but anyways, I'll explain it from here. So we have this list over here. Okay. So this list is nothing but the same kind of information that we were getting for an individual, day. Instead of that, we have information for multiple days, right? So there's a date part, there's a main field. Main has these individual properties like temperature, fields like min, max, pressure, humidity, and all of this information, right? Then there is the weather part, which gives us the description and the icon. Okay. Um, so all of this information is repeated basically. So today's date is, so for example, this is 30th of August, right? 3 p.m. So this is the hourly forecast. So if you examine this field, it's giving us the date as well as the time. So if we look at this API, it gives us a 5-day forecast, and it is divided into 3 hours. So the first day it will cover 3 hours of information for that day. So if you see, there is a total of 40 fields, right? That means we have 40 such information inside this list object. So for each day we have around we have we have somewhere around 8 rows. Okay. So if we look at this, we have this field basically, which is, let's look at the timestamp. This one is for 3 p.m. Then if we look at the next one, this one is for 6 p.m. So 3 hours gap. The next one will be of 9 p.m. and then the other one will basically point to the next day, and then it's 12 a.m. basically, and so on. Okay, we will have 40 fields like this. So each divided by a gap of 3 hours. Okay, so using this, we'll be populating this part. So we'll show a 12-hour duration. We'll just pick up, whatever is the current time for us right now. From that duration, the forecast for the next 12 hours. Okay. So whatever are the next 12 fields which are greater than whatever is the current time that we are using this API, we'll show this information over here. And sorry, that information in the hourly forecast, and in the 5-day forecast, we'll just pick up, one field each uh, from each of the days, and we'll just show the high, low, and the name of that day. We'll just show that information, and we'll also show an image associated with that temperature, whether it's raining or it's sunny or cloudy. So all of that information is available to us. We're getting that from the API. So this weather part has this icon description, right? There's this icon code which is available to us. So let's take a look at what are the icons available. So I was going through the documentation, so they have provided this. So if you remember, we're getting some code over here like 10D basically. So there's this image for 10D, which is cloudy with, I mean, it's raining and there's slight sunshine, right? So this is the image for the day part, and 10N similarly represents the image for the night part. So if we want to access a particular image, we specify this URL. Okay, and this is the part which we will be switching basically. So whatever the value of icon that we get over here, we'll create a URL like this. Okay, and we'll just replace this part. So we should get the corresponding image which is provided by this open weather map website. So you can go through this page as well. It's available in the resources, but I'll paste it in the chat also. Okay, all right. um, so using this approach, we'll be able to get the icons that we want to show for the forecast. Now, is this part clear to you guys, that how we are fetching the data? And you know is that part clear to you guys? Like, what is the requirement of the app, the site that we're using, and the data that we need to fetch? Okay, so for the forecast part, we'll be using similar fields like the min temperature and max temperature, and we'll show an icon just to represent what's the associated image of the weather like. All right, so let's start coding now. Let's build a basic structure which represents this kind of an information. Okay, so let's start with that. So let me create a main tag over here. Let's give it a class name container like this. Now within this, we will have these different areas, right? So what we want to do is we'll create a couple of articles. Use the article tag. We have 1 2 3 4 and 5, so we need around 5 of these. All right, so we created 5 articles. Then each article will have a heading part. So let's call this as So over here we want to show the name of the city, right? So city name. Okay, let's build each of these sections individually with some dummy data, and then we'll style it to make it better, and then we'll finally integrate the API and get the data and show the dynamic information. Okay, all right. So we want to show the name of the city. Then we'll use a paragraph to show the temperature. Then we have another paragraph for showing the description, right? And the next paragraph for the high and the low temperature. Okay, let me open this. All right, so localhost 5500. Okay, not this one. So we are running on port 5501. So high, basically H and L stands for high temperature, high for the day, and low for the day. Okay. All right. So we have the city name, the temperature, the description, and the high and low. Okay. If you guys are confused, I'll just write over here high and low. All right. So we have this particular section ready. Then in the next part, what we want to show is we want to show the hourly forecast, right? So let's add another heading for that. And let's add a article within that, because we'll be having multiple small cards for that, or multiple columns which will be horizontally scrollable, and it will be showing the hourly forecast starting from now. So let's use the h2 tag over here. Let me just give a dummy value now, and then we'll be showing the icon over here. So let's use the image tag img. Okay, this is for the icon. And then similarly we want to show the temperature, right? So let's add a paragraph over here. Let's call it as temperature. So this is one particular column. We'll be having multiple of such columns over here. All right, so I'm just preparing a template right now. Then similar to this, we have the 5-day forecast. Okay, let's add some fields related to that. We need, so this will have multiple articles as well inside it. Okay, so the first one, we'll be showing the temperature for today. We'll be showing the icon. Okay, I'll just use a paragraph for now. We'll replace it with an image tag, and the low for that day, no, and the high for that day. Okay, and we'll have multiple rows of such information. So today, for example, similar to this, we'll have one for, say, Tuesday is the day tomorrow, for example. So we'll have an individual row for that. So 5-day forecast today, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and so on. Okay. And then the last part is related to the what is the field? Okay, the fields like section. And then we'll just have the temperature, because of humidity and certain things. The temperature value might be something, but it feels something different, right? So that is the part that we'll be covering over here. And then the next part is for the humidity, and the value for that. Okay, so we have feels like and then humidity over here. Let's do one thing. Let's give all of these an ID. So let's call this is for the current forecast, right? Then this one is the hourly forecast. Then this one is the 5-day forecast. And similarly, we have this is the fields like area, and then this one is the humidity. All right. Now let's style this basic part of the app. So let's create a style.css. I need to link this style sheet. Okay, so it's been linked. So let's add some default styling. So what we want to do is we want to give the box sizing, and we want to set it to border box. We want to do this for all sorts of elements, the pseudo elements as well. And let's specify that the box sizing is border box. Okay. Then let's get rid of some of the default margin which is coming. So we'll set the margin for the body to 0. Then let's use the font family, which is a serif font or non-serif font, so sans serif, right? So let's use this one. Okay, so that it's easier to read. All right. Okay. And since we are targeting, a mobile first approach, what we will do is we'll give it a width right now of 400 pixels. And I mean, we'll be supporting multiple devices, but just to begin with, we'll do the mobile first approach of designing the website. And let's give it a margin of auto so that it's centrally aligned. Okay. And now let's start styling each of these individual sections so they start looking somewhat like this. All right. So what we want to do is we want to, first of all, let's we have this container, right? Let's create a grid, and we'll define areas within the grid for each of these sections using grid template areas. So let's say display grid. Okay. Then what we want to do is we want to define the number of columns, and remember we are doing a mobile first approach, right? So all these default styling is for the mobile layout, and we'll use media queries to target other breakpoints. So mobile first approach. So what this basically means that all the default styling is considering the mobile view. Okay, that's why I've set the width to 400 right now. Okay, then what we want to do is we want to define the columns. So grid template columns, let's repeat 2 columns and let them take up a fraction of the available space. And let's define the areas. So grid template areas. All right, so we have just defined 2 columns, right? So the first, so if we look at this, we are and if we are dividing this entire thing into two columns, right? So this first area is taking up the entire two columns, this one will also take up the entire two columns, and so will this one, and both of these will take up one column each. Okay, so that is how we will be designing the app. So let's define the different areas. So we want to show the current weather, right? So let's just call that area as current. So we have two for those, so we'll take up two columns for that. Then we'll take up the next two columns for the hourly forecast. So let's just call it as hourly like this. Then the next two columns in the next row would be taken up by the 5-day forecast. Okay, so let's just call it as 5-day like this. And then the last row would be occupied by the fields like section, and the other one is the humidity. Okay, all right, so we have defined the grid template areas. Now let's assign each of these areas a each of these, you know, elements a area. So to do that, we will target them specifically. Let me copy this one, current forecast. All right, it's an ID based, so we use the pound sign and we say grid area, and we specify this to current. Okay, so the moment I specify this to current, you can see that this one has moved to the next row, right? So the entire two columns would be taken up by this one, right? So let me enable the grid lines. And you can see over here that the first, this area is reserved for current, right? Then this one is for hourly, this one is for 5-day, and the other areas as well. So we just need to assign them to the correct areas. Okay, similar to this, we have the area for we have the area for the hourly forecast. Let me copy this value. Okay, grid area, and we'll give the same names that we are defining over here, hourly like this. So it is taking up this entire row now. Similar to this, we have for the 5-day, so 5-day, let me just cross check the name which I have used, which is 5-day forecast like this. Okay, similarly it will take up the grid area, which is 5-day, and then we have fields like grid area, fields like, and so similarly we have the section for humidity, and this will take grid area, humidity like this. So you can see we have divided it, and the last column takes up the last row takes up one column each, right? So you can see that this one is taking up this much space, and this one, and the others are taking up the entire two columns, right? Okay. So far clear, you guys are clear with it. Okay, and let's add some to understand all of this a bit better, let's add some borders so that it's easier for us to visualize how much space is being taken up. and we'll make use of some custom properties. So let's define them on the root element. Okay, so let's define one spacing regular, which is 16 pixels. Then we have spacing medium, which is 8 pixels. Let me move this to the top. And then what we want to do is we want to basically give a border, right? So within our container, we will say, actually, we want this for for right now, for the purpose of visualization, we want it for all of these elements. So this is something temporary that we are adding. We'll remove it later on. So we want to target the container as well as all the article tags which are, you know, immediate children of this container. Let's give them a border of 1 pixel solid. Okay, so you can see that this kind of a structure has been created. And let's use a border radius. Let's use spacing regular over here. Okay, so we have this rounded kind of an appearance. And let's give a padding as well. And yeah, let's use the regular spacing over here as well. So you can see that we have this kind of a structure over here. Did we make a mistake with this 5-day forecast? 5-day forecast, grid area, 5-day, 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 did. Okay, this I have accidentally defined it as a class. It should be ID. Okay, so now it's correct. It's taking up both of the rows. Sorry, both of the columns. All right. And let's do one thing. Let's add some gap between all of these rows and columns. So let's use the uh, regular spacing over here for defining the gap. So you can see we have this kind of a structure ready with us, right? Now our basic layout is somewhat ready. Now let's start working on each of these individual layouts. Okay, all right, so let's style this part. Styles related to current weather data. Let me just add this comment. So what we want to do over here is we want to text align everything to the center like this. Okay, and what we want to do after that is let's target each of these elements individually. Let's add classes for them. So we are in the current forecast. Let's see, let's call this as the temperature. Let's call this as the description. And let's call this as the min max temperature. Okay. And let's define some styling for these. So we will target current forecast. Within that, we'll target the temperature. And what we want to do is we want to give it a certain font size. Okay, we want the the temperature to appear in a large font size. So let's define a couple of font sizes as well. Okay, so we have basically font regular, okay, which is 0.5 rem. Then we have font Actually, let's call this one as small. Let's call this as regular, which is 1 rem. Then we have font large, which is 2 rem, and then we have font extra large, or let's just call it XL. Let's set this as 4 rem. Okay. And for the city, sorry, for this temperature field, let's give it a size of 4 rem. Okay. So font size, font XL, like this. So there's a lot of space which is coming from the default styling which is there. So if we look at this h1 tag, it's taking up somewhere around 1 element. So let's get rid of this margin, and for that what we will do is we will specify that wherever we have a h1 and an h2, we will set the margin to 0. Okay, so the spacing has been taken care of. Then we have some extra, what do you say, let me some extra margin associated with the paragraph as well. Let's reduce this because it's quite a lot. Let's target the paragraph, and let's make use of the spacing which we have defined. Let's make use of margin, and we'll say spacing medium. Okay, so this looks much better compared to before, right? And let's add some styling for the description also. Okay, and let's use a, do we want to touch the font size? Yeah, let's use the regular font over here. And let's give it a font weight as well. So let's define some default font weights as well. So font semi bold, for example, and let's set the weight to 600. Okay, the font weight determines how bold uh, the element is, and we'll specify semi bold over here. All right, and what else? We want to take care of the we want to, okay, I think we have done some basic styling over here. Let's style the min max part as well, current forecast, and then the min max temp, right? Let me just cross check, is that what I have called it over here? Yeah, min max temp. And basically we want the styling to be same for both of these. So let me just copy this here for now, and move this over here. We'll see if we need any specific styling for the description, so that's why I have left that part like that. And now what we'll do is we'll integrate the API and just fetch this part of the information. All right, so let's do that now. So what we want to do is we look for the DOM content loaded. So we'll say document.add event listener DOM content loaded. When that happens, we want to handle that event, and let's create a function which will basically fetch the API part first, right? So we will say we'll define our API key. I have my API key available over here. I'll just copy it. It's already been generated. Okay. This is the API key. You guys generate your own when you're working on this project. And then we'll define a method to get weather, get current weather data. Okay. And we'll make this function async since we'll be using the async and await approach. So I'll use a hard-coded city over here to begin with, which is Pune. Okay. And then let's get a response. And for the current weather, we have a URL available with us. Let's go to that. Let me expand this API. There are other APIs available as well, but not all of them are free. We are targeting the ones which are free, right? The other ones require a paid subscription. So we want to use this one basically. Let me just copy this. Uh, so this is the URL. Let's use the template literal syntax over here. Okay, and let's replace this with the API key which we have. The name of the city is city coming from this variable. Okay, and we want to fetch this information, so we use the fetch function which is provided by the browser. We give it a URL, right? And we wait for this response. All right, so we get this, and we also need to specify the unit. Okay, so the unit, let me just cross check units of measurement. So we want to use metric, right? So we will say units equals metric. This part is hard coded. If you want, you can make it dynamic. You can switch between between the different units which are available. And in the next part, what we will be doing is we'll be so we basically have this response available with us. We want to get the data, so we will convert this response into the JSON format. Actually, we don't need to get the data because we'll just return this information directly, because this itself will give us a promise. Okay, and let's create a function which is load current weather info. Okay, or rather yeah, not current weather info, let's just say current forecast. Okay, this is a new function which we are creating, which will be used to uh, set all of that information that we are fetching from here, and we'll be adding it. So before we call this function and pass it the information that we need, let's call this API and see if it's working properly or not. So we'll say get current weather data. Okay, and let's make this method async because this is returning a promise, right? And we'll just log this to the console. We'll wait for the response. All right, let's save this. And let's check if we are getting the response for the city or not. So for that, we'll go to the networks tab, and you can see that this request went through. I'll just dock it over here. Okay, and you can see this is the response that we are getting, right? So we are interested in the main as well as the weather information, right? So main has the temperature information, right? And also the weather part has the description, which we will be showing over here. All right, and we also have the name available over here as well, name of the city. So all of that information we'll extract out of this. So we have all of this information. So let's save this in a variable, const current weather equals get current data. And so this function which we will be using to populate this information, let me just copy this so that I have a reference of all the information that I need. And what we want to do is we'll use destructuring over here. So we know that all of that information is available within main, and within main we need the temperature, the temp max, and the temp min, right? And we need to get the description from the weather, which is an array. So array destructuring like this, and then within that we need to extract the what do we need to extract? We need to extract the description, right? So let's get the description. All right. Now what we'll do is we'll get this particular element. So let me comment this out. So document dot query selector, we are targeting this element, which is current forecast, right? So we are getting the current forecast. Element, let's save its reference, and then we'll do the further queries on this. We need to get the element which has the temp class, right? And before that we need to get the city basically. So let's do one thing, let's give it a class of city, and let's say city over here, and then we want to say text content equals, so from the response we have a name field, right? So let's use that and set it to name, and we'll pass, so we'll say load current data. We want to wait for this response. Once the response is available, we'll pass the current weather data to this function, and this will destructure the parameters that we need. All right, and similarly for the temperature, uh, we'll say text content equals temp, and then we have the description. Let me just copy this description like this description, and the next one is for the min max temp. All right, the min max temp is here, and then we will specify the we'll format this. So we'll say h for the high, and we'll use template literal, and we'll say temp max space L for the low, and we'll say temp min over here. Okay, let's save this, And so we are calling this function once the data is available. Let's check if we are getting the dynamic information which is being fetched from the API. Let me refresh this. So let's check. Undefined is not iterable, load current forecast, temp min max. Okay, hang on a sec. I think I forgot to close this right here. Okay. Yeah, I need to specify the pound sign over here. So you can see that all the errors have been resolved and we are getting this information, right? Um, so we're getting temperature like 22.53, and let's add a let's just show this value up to 1 decimal point, and let's add a degree uh, symbol over here. So what we will do is let's create a function over here which is used for formatting the temperature. So we'll say const format temperature equals, so we will pass the temperature over here, and this will return uh, the temperature that we are passing. We'll say to fixed, we'll check if it's defined or not, and we just want it up to 1 decimal place, and let's add the degree symbol uh, like this. And over here let's call the format temperature function over here like this, pass it the temperature, and we'll do the same thing for these two as well. Format temperature temp max, format temperature temp min, like this. So we can see we have this information like this, and you can see that broken clouds is in lowercase. Let's fix that as well. And here we'll say text transform capitalize, and you can see that the first letter of each word has been capitalized. So this is looking pretty decent right now, and we're dynamically getting this information from the API. Let's focus on this part next. But before that, I'll take a short break. Okay. And if you guys have any doubts in the meantime, you can ask me in the chat. Okay. Why did you use question mark after temperature? That's just a check basically to, you know, verify that. So if you were present in the last couple of lessons where we were learning about modern JavaScript, so this is known as optional chaining, right? So before we are calling a function on this value, we are just verifying whether this value is null or not. Because if I call this on null, it will throw an exception. Okay. So if that is the case, we don't want this function call to happen. Line number 11. So we're using an arrow function. Okay. This is the function parameter temperature. And since this is a single line, we do not need to write an explicit return statement. Okay. And we're using the template literal syntax over here to format the information. What if we fetch the API value without using a wait? So So if we don't use await, which line number are you talking about? Can you specify that? This one, line number 6. Okay. So if we do not write this statement, the execution will not pause over here, right? It will try to go to this line and it should basically we'll get some sort of an error. So if I remove this, you can see that response.json is not a function, right? Because it did not wait for the response to come. So if you attended the last lecture on promises, we wait for the information to come to us, right? Only once the information is available, then we can convert it into a format which is understood to us. So we are converting this information into JSON format, right? So this will not, this will just move to the next line directly without waiting for the response to come. This will no longer be treated as a promise. I mean, the network request will go and everything, but it will not wait to get the actual response. Okay. So that's why we need to write this await statement. And here, once again, when we are converting into the response into JSON, we're getting a promise in return, right? You can read the signature which is there. And that is why we're writing await over here, so that we are waiting to get the data which is converted into a format which is understood by us. And once it is available, then we are calling this function and basically targeting each of these elements and setting the data that needs to be shown instead of the hard-coded data. All right, so this part is clear. I am hoping that. Let's move on to the hourly forecast. Um, to show this information, what we have to do is we need to use the other API, right? So let's create that API first. Const get hourly forecast. Okay, and this will accept a city basically, and the URL for that is this one. Let me just copy this. Okay. HTTPS. So we'll use fetch over here. Fetch the data. We'll use template literal syntax to format this. Some extra spaces. Okay. So we need to specify the API key over here, which we have. The city. We will wait for this. And let's set this to async. And let's call this as the response. Right. And we are interested in certain parts of the data, not all of it, because this gives us quite a lot of information. But before that, let's just take a look at the data that we're getting. So await response.json And let's log this data to the console. And so I gave an alias for name and I'm calling it as city. And the city we're getting from the current weather data, right? So we'll say get hourly forecast current weather data, and we'll just use destructuring to fetch the name of the city. And yeah, let's see if we are getting the response now. So saying name not resolved. I think I made a mistake. This needs to be to lower case. I think. And it's saying that city to lowercase is not a function. We have the current weather. We're interested in the name field. City to lowercase is not a function. Why not? Let's just check. So for some reason, get hourly forecast. Okay, so for some reason the information had not, updated at the browser level. That's why we are getting that error. Okay. City to lowercase is not a function. What does that mean? Let me just scroll. Okay, yeah, I made a mistake in the URL. Hang on a sec. Let me just copy this part because I don't want to waste time on figuring out what is wrong with the URL. And to type this is going to take some time. So, anyways, URL data forecast query and the unit as metric. Let's save this. Okay, so it's available. And we have the list. We were interested in the list, right? Okay. And within the list, let's just pick certain fields like date text. And within the main, we need the temperature values, right? Temp, min, and max. So this is the information that we need, and we also need the weather. Uh, we need the icon for this part, right? So let's fetch only the information that we need from the list. So what we will do is once the data is available, we will say return data dot map, and we have a we want to go through the list actually. So we'll say list dot map. We have the forecast available to us, and what we are interested in is we are interested in certain fields. So let or rather we can just call it as const, and we are getting this from the forecast, right? we're interested in the main, and from the main we're interested in the temp max and temp min. Okay, this is what we need from the main or main property. Then we need the date and the date txt, and after that what we need is the weather object, and within the weather we need the description and we need the icon. All right, I think we are good to go with all the fields that we need. And let's see, so we have main weather, yeah, missing a colon, and let's return just the things that we need, which is temp max, temp min, date text, description, and the icon. All right, so we have uh, basically the information that we want to display for these parts. We are only extracting that, not getting everything out of there. Okay, all right, so we have this information available to us. Once this is available, so const hourly forecast equals, wait for this, and just like we were loading the information for that particular current forecast, let's load the information for the hourly forecast. Load hourly forecast, which to which we will be passing certain fields. So this one accepts the hourly forecast, and let's make this an arrow function. All right, so for now let's log this to the console, and we'll work on the HTML structure for this. um, okay, give me a sec. And so we have this part available with us, right? And for now what we will do is we'll just um, replicate this part. So what we want to do is whatever we are adding over here, right, all of these articles, uh, these each represent a card which is horizontally scrollable. So since we want it to be horizontally scrollable, let's add it inside a container element which will hold all of these you know articles over here. And so what we need is a image for the icon and the temperature for that particular day. Let's just duplicate these, let's style them, and then we'll work on the data binding part. Okay, and what we want to do now is let's work on one of these. Let's give it a class of time, and then this has a class which is called icon, and then this is a class which is hourly temp, and let's call this entire section the hourly container. Okay, all right. So let's see how we can make this horizontally scrollable. Okay, so we'll move on to this part now. Styles related to hourly forecast. Okay, so this is a great area. And what we want to do is we want to align the text to the center. So we'll say text align center. All right. And the section which we created over here, right? This will have each of these, stacked one besides the other. So let's style that particular element. So hourly container, which is within the hourly forecast. We'll say display grid. Okay. Then we will define the columns. So grid template columns, we want to repeat them. Let's say autofill. Then what we want to do is we want to take a min max and we want to specify the range as 100 pixels or one fraction, whichever is higher. It should pick that value. Then we want to say grid auto flow. That should be in the column direction, right? So now they're being stacked one below the other. We want all of this to happen in columns, right? Like this. And what we want to do is we want to define the width, the height for each of the columns. So grid auto uh, columns. Okay, the columns which are being generated automatically, since we are not specifying how many columns we want to add, right? Uh, so we'll say a min max of whatever is greater, 100 pixels or one fraction, whichever is higher, it should take up that space. All right. And what we want to do is we want this to be horizontally scrollable, right? So we will say overflow x for the horizontal direction, and we'll set it to auto. And now you can see that we have this horizontal scroll, right? Just for this part. Now let's start binding all of this information. Okay. Uh, so we were working on this function, and so for example, let's just pick the, we want to show the data for the next 12 hours, right? So let's create a variable data for 12 hours, and whatever is the hourly forecast, we'll just slice it right now. We'll take the first element and we'll, target basically 13 elements. And so we're just right now, just for the sake of it, we're picking some random, you know, information, hourly information. We're picking the first 12 uh, items which are available in the hourly forecast, right? So we'll just show the data for the next 12 hours. Then what we want to do is we want to basically select this element, right? So let's get this. So document dot query selector. This is a class based element. So let's take its reference hourly container equals this thing. Okay. We have stored it in a variable, and let's create a inner HTML, and what we'll do is, so we'll generate all of these programmatically. All right. So let's create a loop for let forecast of data for 12 hours, and what we want to show here is the temperature. We want to show the icon and we want to show the date text. Okay, these are the fields that we are interested in, and we'll just create a string. We'll append all of these to it one by one. Now I'll just paste this article tag which I copied, and what we want to do here is, so this is the now part. So here we'll be showing the time, right? So we will say, if we look at the response, okay, let's just go through the response for this very quickly. And look at the fields for the forecast. So we have this list, and if we take a look at date txt, it is the date, space, and the time part. We are just interested in the time part since we are showing the hourly forecast, right? So we'll make use of the split functionality, string.split function, and we'll split it using space dot split, and we want to split it using a space, and we're interested, so this split splits it using the delimiter which we are providing over here, which is a space. So it will split the time part in an array and the date part in an array. So the time part is coming as the second, at the is the second element of the array, so it will be at index 1. So we're using something hard coded over here for the time being. Then for the icon, let's use the source attribute and let's set that value over here. And so we are just getting the icon code, right? So what we will do is we'll create a function which allows us to get that icon from the URL. Okay, so for that what we will do is we'll go to the documentation, and let me just open that particular icon section. I have the URL open with me. Okay, so it needs to be in this format, right? So let's copy this and we'll create a function, a helper function, just like we had for formatting temperature. Const create icon URL. Okay, it accepts an icon, and we are creating a URL out of this. Okay, and we'll replace this with the icon that we are getting as part of the function parameter. Okay, and let's set this over here. We'll say icon URL and specify the icon over here. Let me get rid of this. And the next part we want to show is the temperature. So we'll say format temperature and we'll pass the temperature value, and we'll append all of these strings, and then we'll just say hourly container dot inner html equals inner html, and let me just call it as inner html string. Let's save this and let's go back to the weather app. Okay, let's do a refresh. Hang on a sec. Yeah, obviously I need to call this function. So load hourly forecast, and I'll just pass it the hourly forecast. And now we have the information available, right? Um, so we can see the time part, we see an image of the thing and the temperature. Let's, format this right now. Um, let's give it a gap. Let's use a spacing medium. Okay. Oops. Yeah. So we have this spacing available now. So it's showing the forecast for somewhere around 9. Uh, then in the morning, it is showing the other parts as we are going ahead. Based on whatever was the description, it is showing that information. So is this part clear to you guys? How we are fetching the hourly forecast? Yeah, they will format this. We want to do this part such that it is showing the information uh, in that particular time zone. Right now is just to check whether the information is being fetched, so we'll take care of all of those things. All right, so this is clear to you guys. Let's style this a bit, and let me get rid of all of these. It's not needed. Okay, and so we have the hourly container. So we'll do the rest of the styling based on this. So for the temperature, we have a certain style. Similarly for the icon, and lastly the what were we calling this field? The hourly temperature, and the first part was time. All right. So for the time part, I think the size is a bit big. Instead of the h3, let's use the instead of the h2, let's use the h3 tag here. Okay, looks much clearer compared to before. The image, let's give it a height of 100 pixels and a width of 100 pixels. And let's say object fit contain. And then for the hourly temperature, let's use the font size. Let's use the regular font size, and let's give it a font weight, which is the semi bold font. So I think this is a decent enough styling for this. Okay, let's work on the feels like and the humidity part. We'll come back to the 5-day forecast in the next session. So let's just work on that part. Okay, so let's create a styling for this. So both of them we will just say text align to the center and text align to the center. And let's just assign the data over here. And what we want to do is we want to get the we want to target the temperature field, right? So let's say class fields like temp. Let's target this element. Let's say container. Within that element we want to query this element, right? So we'll say query selector fields like temperature, and we'll say so we need to pass the current weather over here, right? And within that that information is available in it's available in the main part, right? So what we want to do is we'll just pass the let's call that load fields like, we'll say current weather, and we're interested in the main, and within main we have um, what do we have? We have the fields. Let me just cross check from the network. So it's fields like and humidity, both of them are coming from main, and we'll just set this to fields like. Since this is temperature, we'll use the format temperature function. We'll pass this temperature. Okay, so I forgot to save this index.html. Left hand side is an assignment. Yeah, I forgot to specify the property over here. So this needs to be text content. And now you can see that we have this temperature value available over here. And similar to this, const load humidity. Actually, let me just make a copy of this. And this is in temperature, so we'll just use it as it is. Let's get rid of this, and this is probably in percentage if I'm not wrong. And let's call the function load humidity and pass it the current weather object. And And obviously I need to change this to humidity and give this a class name, humidity value. And now we have the information available to us. All right, so we'll work on this part tomorrow, and I hope whatever we have covered so far in today's session, that is clear to you guys. Okay, so in tomorrow's session we'll focus on this part, and we'll also work on the desktop mode. For this, we'll make it responsive across other breakpoints as well. Okay. All right. So let's stop here. And in case there are any more doubts, you can ask me in the voice channel in Discord. I hope you guys enjoyed working on this so far, and we'll make it, much better tomorrow. All right. Thank you, and I'll see you guys in the next session. Take care. Bye bye.